Before we embark on this incredible journey together, I have a small, heartfelt request. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like. It costs you nothing but means the world to me. And let me know in the comments which beautiful corner of the world you're watching from. Your support truly makes a difference. I was standing in my wedding dress when the phone rang at 6:47 a.m. on what should have been my wedding day. "Rebecca, thank God you answered," my maid of honor Sarah gasped through tears. "You need to get to St. Mary's Chapel right now. Marcus he's already there with someone else. She looks exactly like you." My hands went numb. The phone slipped and clattered on my apartment floor. Through my bedroom window, I could see the chapel's bell tower just 3 blocks away. The same chapel where Marcus and I had planned every detail of our ceremony for 8 months. White roses, string quartet, his grandmother's ring that he'd given me last Christmas. But I wasn't getting married today. Someone else was. Someone who looked exactly like me. I knew exactly who it was. My twin sister Elena had been missing for 3 weeks. She'd vanished after our explosive fight about money, about our mother's inheritance, about the pattern of lies that had defined our relationship since childhood. I thought she'd gone to our aunt's house in Portland to cool off. I was wrong. I threw on jeans and a sweater, my wedding dress still hanging on the closet door like a ghost. My hands shook as I drove through morning traffic, running red lights, my mind spinning. How was this possible? How had she convinced Marcus that she was me? But even as I asked the question, I knew the answer. Elena had always been the better actress, the better liar, the one who could charm her way out of anything while I was the responsible twin, the reliable one, the one who always cleaned up her messes. Not this time. What I discovered at that chapel would change everything I thought I knew about love, family, and the price of being too trusting. The parking lot at St. Mary's was full of cars I recognized, my college friends, Marcus's co-workers, even my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had insisted on bringing homemade cookies for the reception. They were all there, for my wedding, without me. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, watching guests stream into the chapel in their Sunday best. Everyone looked happy, excited, completely unaware that the bride they were about to celebrate wasn't the woman they thought she was. Sarah appeared at my passenger window, her face pale and streaked with mascara. She climbed into the car without invitation. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I tried calling you last night, but tell me exactly what you saw." Sarah twisted her hands in her lap. "I got here early to check on the flowers. Marcus was already at the altar with Father Mackenzie, and then she walked in wearing your grandmother's dress, the one from your apartment closet. She had your hair, your walk, even that little nervous thing you do with your hands." Did Marcus seem surprised? No. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "That's what scared me. He looked happy, really happy, like this was exactly what he expected." My stomach dropped. How long have they been planning this? "I don't know. But Rebecca, there's something else. I saw the marriage license. It's dated for today, but the signatures looked old, like they'd been practicing." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Marcus's number. Our last text exchange was from yesterday morning. "Can't wait to marry you tomorrow, beautiful. Love you forever." Had he sent that to me or to Elena? "What do you want to do?" Sarah asked. I stared at the chapel doors. Inside, my life was being stolen by the one person I trusted above all others, my twin sister, my mirror image, my greatest enemy disguised as family. I want to see how this ends. The decision to walk into that chapel was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. Sarah and I slipped in through the back entrance during the processional music. The chapel was packed, every pew filled with familiar faces turned toward the altar. I hid behind the last row, my heart hammering against my ribs. And there she was. Elena stood at the altar in my grandmother's ivory lace dress, the one I'd carefully preserved for 20 years after Grandma Rose passed away. She wore my engagement ring, my pearl earrings, even my perfume. I could smell the jasmine and vanilla from where I crouched. But it was her posture that made my blood run cold. She stood with perfect confidence, radiant and beautiful, accepting congratulations and admiring gasps from our guests as if she deserved every moment of this attention. Marcus looked handsome in his navy suit, the same one we'd chosen together at Men's Warehouse 6 months ago. He was beaming, holding Elena's hand with genuine affection. This wasn't a man who'd been tricked or manipulated. This was a man in love. Father Mackenzie began the ceremony with his familiar warm voice. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Marcus David Chen and Rebecca Elena Morrison." Elena had used my full name. She'd planned this down to every legal detail. I watched my fiancé promise to love, honor, and cherish my twin sister until death do them part. I watched him slide my grandmother's wedding band onto her finger. I watched them kiss while our friends and family cheered. "You may now kiss the bride," Father Mackenzie announced. The kiss lasted longer than it should have. When they separated, Marcus whispered something in Elena's ear that made her laugh, a sound that was almost identical to mine, but not quite. I'd spent 28 years learning the difference. As the recessional music began, I made my choice. I stepped out from behind the pew and into the center aisle. The moment Elena saw me, her face went white as her stolen wedding dress. The music stopped mid-note. Conversations died. 200 guests turned to stare at me, standing in the aisle, still wearing my jeans and sweater, my hair uncombed, looking like the disruption I was. Marcus followed Elena's terrified gaze and saw me. His expression shifted through confusion, disbelief, and finally something that looked almost like relief. "Rebecca?" he called out, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent chapel. "Hello, Marcus." My voice was calmer than I expected. "Beautiful ceremony, though I notice you seem to have married the wrong bride." Elena grabbed Marcus's arm, her knuckles white against his navy sleeve. "She's lying," she hissed loud enough for the front rows to hear. "She's my sister. She's always been jealous of me. She's trying to ruin our wedding day." I reached into my purse and pulled out my driver's license, holding it high enough for everyone to see. "Rebecca Elena Morrison," I called out. "Born March 15th, 1995, the same birthday as the woman wearing my grandmother's dress." Murmurs rippled through the chapel. Mrs. Patterson in the third row adjusted her glasses and squinted at both of us. Marcus's mother, Patricia, stood up from the front pew. "Marcus," Patricia said carefully, "who exactly did you just marry?" Elena's composure cracked. "Tell them, Marcus. Tell them I'm Rebecca. Tell them we've been planning this wedding for months." But Marcus was staring at me with growing recognition. "You have the scar," he said quietly. "What scar?" Elena snapped. "From when we went hiking at Devil's Peak last summer." Marcus's voice grew stronger. "Rebecca fell and cut her chin on a rock. I drove her to the emergency room." I touched the small white line below my jaw. "Dr. Martinez gave me 6 stitches. You held my hand the whole time." Elena's face flushed red. "That's not... I forgot about..." "You forgot because you weren't there," I said simply. "This is ridiculous," Elena declared, but her voice wavered. "Marcus, tell them who I am." Marcus looked between us for a long moment. Then he slowly removed his wedding ring and set it on the altar. What Marcus said next shattered every assumption I'd made about this betrayal. "I've known since yesterday morning," he said quietly. "Elena called me on Thursday night. She told me you'd changed your mind about the wedding, that you were too afraid of commitment and had asked her to take your place. She said you were too embarrassed to face everyone." The chapel was so silent I could hear my own heartbeat. "And you believed her?" "I wanted to believe her." Marcus's voice broke slightly. "Because I was terrified that you were getting cold feet. You'd been so distant the past few weeks, so worried about your job, about money, about whether we were making the right choice." Elena stepped between us. "He chose me, Rebecca. He chose me over you." "No." Marcus turned to face her fully. "I chose what I thought was you being brave enough to marry me despite your fears. I chose what I thought was you finding a creative solution to your anxiety." I felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Elena? How did you know I was having doubts? Elena's eyes darted around the chapel, looking for an escape that didn't exist. I could tell. You've been reading my journal. The certainty hit me like ice water. You took my spare apartment key 3 weeks ago. You've been going through my things, learning my fears, my private thoughts about Marcus. That's not true. But Sarah stepped forward from the back of the chapel. I saw you, Elena. Last Tuesday afternoon. You were leaving Rebecca's apartment building when I came to drop off her bridesmaid dress. You said Rebecca wasn't home. Because she wasn't home. I was at work, I said evenly. You used my spare key to break into my apartment. You read my journal. You learned about my doubts, my fears, my private conversations with Marcus. Then you used that information to convince him that I was too scared to marry him. Marcus closed his eyes. The things you knew about our private conversations, our inside jokes, places we'd been together. I thought you were remembering things that proved you were Rebecca. She studied me like a role, I said. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. This was calculated, planned. Father Mackenzie, who had been standing frozen at the altar, finally found his voice. I believe we need to discuss the legality of this ceremony. If the bride's identity was fraudulent, then this marriage may not be valid. Elena spun around to face the priest. You can't do this. We're legally married. I have rights. But everyone could see the truth now written across her face. The legal complications of Elena's fraud were just beginning to unravel, but her desperation was turning dangerous. Patricia Chen, Marcus's mother, stood up from the front pew with the authority of a woman who'd been a family law attorney for 30 years. Elena Morrison, she said formally, you have committed identity fraud, document forgery, and potentially marriage fraud. This ceremony is invalid, and you could face serious criminal charges. Elena's composure completely shattered. You can't prove anything. Marcus wanted to marry me. He chose me. With forged documents, Patricia continued calmly, using your sister's identity, wearing stolen property. She gestured to my grandmother's dress. I watched Elena's face cycle through panic, rage, and finally something that looked like grief. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Rebecca, please, Elena said, her voice smaller now. I love him. I really love him. I know you do, I said quietly, but love built on lies isn't love at all. It's theft. Marcus had been silent through this exchange, but now he spoke directly to Elena. Did you ever consider that what you've done has hurt me too? I thought I was marrying the woman I fell in love with. Instead, I married someone who's been lying to me from the moment she walked into my life. But I can be her, Elena pleaded. I can be everything she is, better than she is. No, I said firmly. You can't, because you're not me. You're Elena, and Elena has never been enough for you. Sarah approached cautiously. Rebecca, what do you want to do about the police? I looked at my twin sister in my wedding dress, surrounded by guests who were slowly realizing the magnitude of what they'd witnessed. Elena looked small and frightened, despite the elaborate costume she wore. I want to see the marriage license, I said. Father Mackenzie retrieved the document from his office. The signature read, Rebecca Elena Morrison, in handwriting that was close to mine, but not perfect. The witness signatures belonged to Elena's friend Jessica and Marcus's brother David, both of whom looked mortified. Elena, I said, holding up the license, this document makes you guilty of identity fraud, but it also means you're not legally married to Marcus. This whole ceremony was theater. For the first time since I'd walked into the chapel, Elena looked truly defeated. The aftermath of confronting Elena's deception revealed secrets that went much deeper than a stolen wedding. Marcus's brother David approached us with his face flushed with embarrassment. Rebecca, I need to tell you something. Elena came to see me last week. She said you were having second thoughts about the wedding and had asked her to step in. She had all these details about your relationship with Marcus, things only you would know. What kind of details? She knew about the fight you and Marcus had about kids. She knew about his job interview in Seattle that he didn't get. She even knew about his surprise birthday party you planned last year. I felt sick. Elena hadn't just read my journal. She'd been systematically gathering information about my life for months. Marcus looked pale. "Elena, how long have you been planning this?" Elena stood at the altar in my dress, looking like a beautiful broken doll. "Since Christmas," she whispered. "Christmas?" I thought back to our family dinner 5 months ago. Elena had seemed normal then, maybe a little quieter than usual. "What happened at Christmas?" "I saw the way Marcus looked at you when you opened his gift. The ring." Elena's voice was barely audible. "I saw how happy you were, how perfect everything was for you. And I realized I'd never had anything like that. I'd never been chosen first by anyone." Patricia Chen stepped forward. "Elena, that doesn't justify identity fraud." "I know!" Elena exploded. "I know it was wrong. But Rebecca has everything. The good job, the nice apartment, the man who adores her. She's always been the responsible one, the one everyone trusts and respects. I'm the screw-up twin, the one who can't keep a job or a boyfriend or even pay her rent on time." I stared at her. "So you decided to steal my life?" "I decided to borrow it, just for one day. I thought maybe if I could be you for one day, I could understand what it felt like to be chosen." Sarah walked over to Elena and gently touched her arm. "Elena, you can't become someone else just because you don't like who you are." Elena pulled away. "Easy for you to say. You're not the twin who was born second, who spent your whole childhood being the other one, who watched your sister excel at everything while you failed at everything." The honesty in her words hit me like a physical blow. Elena's raw confession forced me to confront painful truths about our relationship that I'd been avoiding for years. "You're right," I said quietly, and the chapel fell silent again. "I have had advantages that you didn't." Elena looked surprised by my admission. "But Elena, those advantages came because I made different choices. When we were 18 and both got into college, I chose to study accounting while you chose to study art therapy. When we were 23 and both needed jobs, I took the boring corporate position while you chose to travel Europe for 6 months. Because you were always the practical one. Because I chose to be practical, just like you chose to be spontaneous." I took a step closer to her. "But I've never been jealous of your creativity, your ability to make friends instantly, your talent for making people laugh. I've actually envied those things about you." Marcus watched this exchange with growing understanding. "Elena, when you pretended to be Rebecca, you weren't becoming someone better. You were erasing everything that makes you uniquely yourself." Elena wiped tears from her eyes, smearing her carefully applied makeup. "But nobody wants the real me, Marcus. Men date me for a few months and then leave. Employers hire me and then fire me. Even our parents always said Rebecca was the responsible one, while I was just the fun one." "Fun is valuable too," I said gently. "But you can't build a life on deception, Elena. Even if this wedding had worked, how long could you have pretended to be me? What happens when Marcus wanted to discuss my job, my friends, my memories that you don't share?" Patricia Chen cleared her throat. "From a legal standpoint, this marriage is invalid. The license was obtained through fraud, and the ceremony was based on false pretenses. Elena, you're looking at potential charges for identity theft, document fraud, and theft of property." She gestured to my grandmother's dress. Elena sank into the front pew. "I just wanted one day of being chosen first." "But you weren't chosen," Marcus said, not unkindly. "I was manipulated into choosing someone who was pretending to be the woman I love. That's not the same thing." Father Mackenzie spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation in my office. This is a house of worship, and these guests came here expecting a celebration." I looked around at our friends and family, all of whom were standing frozen in their formal wear, unsure whether to leave or stay. The decision I made next would determine whether this story ended in revenge or restoration. "Father Mackenzie, could you give us just 5 more minutes?" I asked. "I think our guests deserve to understand what happened here today. I turned to face the congregation. 200 people who had come to celebrate love were instead witnessing its betrayal. But they were also witnessing something else, the moment when someone chooses grace over revenge. "Thank you all for coming," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I know this isn't the wedding you expected to attend. Marcus and I will not be getting married today, and I won't be marrying the woman who impersonated me either." A nervous laugh rippled through the chapel. "But I want you to know that what you witnessed here matters. You saw what happens when someone confuses love with possession, when someone tries to steal an identity instead of building their own." I looked at Elena, who was still sitting in the front pew. "You also saw what real love looks like. Marcus could have gone through with this marriage to save face. Instead, he chose honesty, even when it was painful." Marcus stepped down from the altar and stood beside me, not touching, but present. "Elena, you need help," I continued. "Professional help to understand why you thought stealing my life was preferable to building your own. But I won't be pressing charges today." Elena looked up sharply. "You won't?" "Not today, but I have conditions." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. "I've already called Dr. Sarah Martinez. She's a therapist who specializes in identity issues and sibling relationships. You have an appointment on Monday at 10 a.m. "And if I don't go?" "Then I call the police and file charges for identity theft, fraud, and theft of my grandmother's dress." My voice was steady. "Your choice, Elena." Patricia Chen looked surprised. "Rebecca, are you sure about this approach?" "I'm sure that revenge won't fix what's broken here, but accountability might." Marcus touched my arm gently. "What about us?" I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since walking into the chapel. He was still handsome, still kind, still the man I'd fallen in love with 2 years ago. But something had changed. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. The chapel was quiet, except for the sound of Elena crying softly in the front pew. The conversation Marcus and I had after everyone left the chapel changed both of our lives forever. We sat in his car in the empty parking lot, while Elena changed out of my grandmother's dress in the chapel bathroom. The silence between us felt heavy with unspoken questions. "Rebecca, I need you to know that I never stopped loving you," Marcus said finally. "Even when I thought you were too scared to marry me, even when I thought Elena was you finding a way to overcome your fear." "But you were willing to marry Elena." "I was willing to marry who I thought was you." He turned to face me. "That's the part that scares me. How did I not know the difference? How did I miss signs that should have been obvious?" I considered this. Because Elena studied me like a script. She knew things about us that she shouldn't have known. Things only you and I had talked about. Your journal. And probably my emails, my text messages, maybe even recorded phone calls. I felt violated all over again. She's been planning this for months, Marcus. This wasn't an impulsive decision. Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "I keep thinking about the past few weeks. You seem distant, worried about things. Were those the doubts Elena knew about?" "Yes." I took a deep breath. "I was scared, Marcus. Not about marrying you, but about whether I was ready to be someone's wife, whether I was mature enough, stable enough. All the normal pre-wedding anxiety that Elena turned into ammunition against me." "Are you still scared?" I thought about watching him marry my sister 2 hours ago, about the relief I'd felt when the ceremony was revealed as fraud, about the strange sense of freedom that came with having my biggest fear actually happen. "No," I said, surprising myself. "I'm not scared anymore, but I'm also not ready to pretend this didn't happen." Marcus nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Time. Space to figure out who I am when I'm not cleaning up Elena's messes or worrying about everyone else's expectations." Elena emerged from the chapel in her regular clothes, carrying my grandmother's dress carefully folded over her arms. She approached the car hesitantly. "Rebecca, can I talk to you for a minute?" I got out of the car and walked a few steps away from Marcus. "I'm sorry," Elena said simply. I know that's not enough, but I'm sorry. Sorry you got caught, or sorry you did it? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Both. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was honest. 3 months later, I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and setting boundaries that protect your peace. I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop on Pine Street, grading papers from my new job teaching adult education classes, when Elena walked in. She looked different, healthier, more present in her own skin. "Rebecca, do you have a few minutes?" I gestured to the empty chair across from me. She sat down carefully, as if she wasn't sure she was welcome. "I've been going to therapy twice a week," she said without preamble. "Dr. Martinez says I have something called compare and despair syndrome. I've been measuring my worth against your achievements instead of building my own identity." "How's that going?" "Harder than I expected, but better." Elena ordered a coffee and looked out the window. "I got a job at the community center teaching art classes to seniors. It's not glamorous, but it's mine." "That sounds perfect for you." Dr. Martinez helped me understand something. I've been so busy trying to be you that I never learned to be me. She turned back to me. "I'm 32 years old, and I'm just now figuring out what I actually like, what I'm actually good at, what I actually want." I set down my red pen. "Elena, I need you to understand something. What you did wasn't just wrong, it was devastating. You didn't just steal my wedding day. You made me question everything I believed about love, trust, and family." "I know. Dr. Martinez says that's part of why I need to make amends without expecting forgiveness." "Smart therapist." Elena smiled slightly. "She also says that healthy siblings don't compete for the same life. They build different lives that complement each other." I thought about this. In all our years as twins, we'd never really learned to be individuals. We'd been the Morrison twins instead of Rebecca and Elena. "I've been thinking about that too," I said. "I've been so focused on being the responsible twin that I never explored who I might be if I wasn't always cleaning up your messes." "And? Who are you?" I laughed, still figuring that out. But I know I like teaching more than accounting. I know I want to travel before I get married. I know I want to build a life that's mine, not just a reaction to yours. Elena nodded. "What about Marcus?" "We're talking, slowly. He's in therapy too, trying to understand how he missed the signs." "Do you think you'll get back together?" I considered this. Maybe, but not as the people we were before. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, two sisters learning to exist in the same space without competition. 1 year after Elena impersonated me at my own wedding, I finally understood that the best revenge isn't destroying someone, it's refusing to let their actions destroy you. I was in my classroom on a Tuesday evening, helping Mrs. Chen, no relation to Marcus, practice for her citizenship test, when my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "Saw the announcement in the paper. Congratulations, you deserve all the happiness in the world." The announcement was for my engagement to David. Marcus's brother, actually. Life has a funny way of writing stories you never see coming. David and I had reconnected during the aftermath of Elena's deception. He'd felt so guilty about unknowingly participating in the fraud that he'd offered to help me sort through the legal complications. Coffee meetings became dinners, became honest conversations about identity, trust, and the courage it takes to start over. Unlike my relationship with Marcus, which had been built on comfortable assumptions, David and I were building something new from the ground up. We talked about everything: my fears, his dreams, our family histories, our individual goals. We were choosing each other with full knowledge of who we were as separate people. Marcus had moved to Seattle 6 months ago, finally taking a job offer similar to the one he'd been rejected for earlier. We'd exchanged Christmas cards and remained friendly, but we both understood that some bridges, once burned by deception, can't be rebuilt the same way. Elena was doing well. She'd completed a year of therapy and had started dating a sculptor named James, who appreciated her creativity and emotional intensity, More importantly, she was learning to appreciate those qualities in herself. The most surprising change was in my relationship with my family. Setting boundaries with Elena had given me permission to set boundaries with everyone. I'd stopped being the twin who fixed everything and started being the woman who protected her own peace. My students were packing up their books, chattering in multiple languages about their homework assignments. Mrs. Chen lingered to show me pictures of her granddaughter. "Teacher Rebecca," she said in her careful English, "you helped me learn American Dream. Now I help granddaughter learn too." I thought about dreams, stolen ones, rebuilt ones, and the ones we create when we finally stop trying to live someone else's life. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be destroyed by someone else's choices. Sometimes it's building something so beautiful from the ashes that the original loss becomes a gift. Elena tried to steal my life, but she accidentally gave me a better one. They're my final word. True strength isn't about getting back at people who hurt you. It's about building boundaries so strong that their actions can't touch the peace you've created for yourself. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to choose healing over revenge. And remember, your story isn't over just because someone tried to rewrite it. You still hold the pen, Rebecca Morrison.